Hi, I'm Loretta, and I'm really glad that you showed up today. Welcome to my sewing room.
Good morning, quilters. Welcome to my sewing room. So here I have block number 10, and I've got it all laid out on my cutting mat with all the pieces in the correct order. And now we're just going to start sewing them together. Once again, I'll work in quadrants. This will be the first one, second one, third one, and fourth one. So let's get started. I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. Okay, we're ready to start sewing now. So I brought over all the pieces for the first quadrant. And the first thing I'm going to do is piece these two larger triangles together. We're going to just do this exactly the same way we've done in previous months. Lining up the points here and underneath, and the same thing on the other end. This outside point with this point here. And start sewing this with our scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. And once again, I'm on my Bernina 790 plus. I have the 37D foot and using a 2.0 stitch length. And I have my dual feet engaged as well. So I've got that stitched together, and then I'm just going to chain piece onto the next step and put this triangle onto the diamond shape. So once again, matching this outer point with the one underneath, and on the other end matching this inner point with the straight edge, keeping these raw edges aligned. Just making sure that I can see this line on my throat plate, which is giving me my scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'll just take these two over to the pressing station, get those seams pressed open, and then I'll add the next triangle onto this unit here. Okay, I've got both of those seams pressed open, and now I'll add this remaining triangle onto the other side of this diamond. Once again, we're going to match this inner point with the straight edge. Line up these other raw edges. And at the top here, it's not going to really line up with much of anything, but this little V will be a 1/4 inch from the edge. All right, we'll press that seam open, and then I'll join these two units into a quadrant. All right, these two are ready to put together. Just place them right sides together, making sure you're going to stitch on the seam that you want to stitch on. As always, this triangle unit goes to the right of this other more diamond shaped unit. And on this end, these two will line up. This little corner sticks out a little bit, and the one underneath it does as well. And we're again sewing with bias edges. So the dual feed helps with this, but I'm gonna kind of ease this in to make sure there's no stretching on this top piece. If you don't have a dual feed, it's even more important to kind of ease this top piece in just a little bit because of the way the sewing machine works. The bottom piece tends to feed slightly faster than the top piece, which is why the dual feed mechanism works so well. But on these bias edges, because they're so prone to stretching, it's even more crucial to make sure that those pieces are feeding at the same rate. All right, we have a quadrant finished. I'll just press that seam open and then I'll grab the pieces for the next quadrant. And here are the pieces for the next quadrant. I'll piece everything in the exact same order that I did for the previous one. And once again, this time, all 4 quadrants of the block are pieced in an identical fashion, just the fabrics change. Make sure everything's lined up correctly before I start. Okay, I will press those, come back and add the next triangle. All right, one more triangle to add to this unit. All right, press that one, and then I'll put the second quadrant together. Okay, now I'll put these 2 pieces right sides together, and we will finish up the second quadrant. Now that I'm a little ways in, match up this other corner up here, and then make sure that I'm easing in any fullness that's been created by that bias. Stopping every now and then, letting my presser foot lift up so that I can allow those fabrics to relax, and you'll get a much nicer seam by doing that. All right, press that one open and we'll have our second quadrant finished. And now here are all the pieces for quadrant 3. Just going to do the exact same thing 2 more times. Press again and add the next triangle. All right, another triangle to add, one more seam after that, and we'll have our third quadrant. So now I'm going to put this piece on. Just making sure everything is lined up exactly the way I want it. All right, get that one pressed, and then we'll put this third quadrant together. All right, right sides together. Again, this 3-piece unit goes to the right of the one with 2 pieces in it. Making sure those edges are all aligned. Partway into my seam, come up here and match the top. Not sure if I've talked yet about why I don't like to use pins, but I actually feel like they distort the fabric and cause more problems than they solve. I did use pins when I first started quilting, but it's been several years since I've used pins while quilting, except in very critical areas. So I will get that one pressed, and that will be the third quadrant finished. And here are all the pieces for the fourth and final quadrant. And once again, we're just doing things exactly the same way, just with different fabrics. Press all that open. All right, one more triangle here. Making sure everything's lined up properly. Press that, and then we'll join all of that into the final and fourth quadrant. All right, last seam for this part, and our quadrants will be all completed. Okay, and since I can chain piece this, I have the quadrant 1 and 2 here, and I'm going to get those pieced as well. So lining up all these raw edges, that 90-degree corner. Let that presser foot lift to let those relax, since I've come over that quite a bit of bulk right there. Continue on, making sure I'm lined up here at the other end. And just letting that presser foot lift every now and then, realigning if necessary. All right, press those two pieces, and then we'll put the bottom half of the block together. And here are quadrants 3 and 4. Put those right sides together, lining up this 90-degree corner, making sure the raw edges are even. And just stitch in this seam. All right, I will get that pressed, and then we'll just have the join, and we'll have a finished block number 10. And here are the two block halves. Put them right sides together. Matching up that center seam. And I'll put a clip there. Okay, starting at this one end, this little triangle that sticks out matches up with the one underneath. Get those lined up. Make sure these raw edges are lined up as well. Okay, I'm getting too close to that clip, so I'm going to take it out. Check underneath. Make sure everything is lined up. Hold it there with my stiletto. All right, I'm past that center now. So line up on the other side. Once again, just letting my presser foot lift ever so often. Okay, and we're all done with the piecing of block number 10. I will get that pressed and meet you over at the cutting table and show you the finished block. So here we are with a finished block number 10. Hope you've enjoyed putting this block together with me. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate it. And if you comment, I do my very best to answer every single comment or question or respond in some way. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next month.